A very good afternoon to you from the studios of Atlantic Television Network in Port Harcourt. This is ATN International News for today. To begin, let's take a look at the biggest stories making the headlines. First, Ghana farmers who had beans in anticipation of price hike. Boat capsizes off Comoros Island, killing 25 people. Podcaster Rogan endorses Donald Trump for president. Pennsylvania judge allows Marxist $1 million voter giveaway. Turkish arrested over attempt to break Venezuela sanctions. Philippines calls for evacuations. Braces for Typhoon Jingxing. 29 killed in Israeli airstrikes in several areas in Gaza. We are open for adverts placements, news and events coverage, personality, society and political interviews, products, service promotion and commercials. You can connect with us on all our ATN socials, Facebook and YouTube at Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok at Atlantic TV Network 1, Twitter at Atlantic TV Net. Watch us live on our website, www.atlanticnetwork.tv. These and more stories to come your way in a moment. Do stay with us. And now the news in details, we delve into Africa. Cocoa farmers in Ghana, the world's second largest producer, are holding back their beans in anticipation of higher prices. Industry sources informed media, potentially limiting supplies to global cocoa markets eager to recover from last season's poor harvest. While the extent of up-country bean stockpiling is unclear, a dozen farmers, buyers, and officials from the state regulator Cocoa Board confirmed the trend, with some attributing it to a slowdown in bean purchases. The sources all noted that farmers are responding to comments made by Vice President Mahamudu Bawumia, who told supporters of the ruling No Patriotic Party 4 weeks ago that the government would increase prices for farmers. Bawumia, who is standing for the presidency in the 7th December elections, made these remarks in Sefwi Waiso in southwestern Ghana, one of the country's major cocoa growing areas. He has since said his comments were misunderstood. According to Cocoa Board officials, Ghana lost over a third of its 2023-2024 cocoa output to smuggling, adding to problems that led to more than a two-decade low in production and contributed to record high global cocoa prices. In an effort to improve farmer incomes and curb smuggling, Ghana raised the fixed farm gate price by nearly 45% to 48,000 cedis, just under $3,000 per metric ton of for the 2024-2025 season, which began in September. However, neighboring Cote d'Ivoire, the world's largest cocoa producer, increased its price to 1,800 francs CFA per kilogram, just slightly higher than Ghana's. Chad's interim president Mahamat Idris Deby has threatened to withdraw the Central African country from a multinational security force, which he said had failed in its task of tackling insurgent groups in the Lake Chad region. Deby made the statement on Sunday during a visit to the region, which sits in part of Western Chad and also Nigeria, Niger, and Cameroon. Around 40 Chadian soldiers were killed in an attack there by suspected Boko Haram militants in late October. Announcing the launch of an operation against the attackers, Deby said he was considering withdrawing from the Multinational Joint Task Force, MNJTF, made up of troops from the countries bordering Lake Chad. The joint forces' work has been complicated by divisions and a lack of cooperation, but the withdrawal of Chad would represent a major blow, as its armed forces are among the most respected in the region. Deby cited the lack of joint efforts against the common enemy, which is unfortunately always observed on the ground. This force, created with the aim of pooling efforts and intelligence, seems to be in a slump. The Lake Chad region has been repeatedly attacked by insurgencies, including by Islamic State militants in West Africa and Boko Haram, which erupted in northeast Nigeria in 2009 and spread to the west of Chad. There was no immediate comment from Nigeria, Niger, and Cameroon. Salwa Abdullah was recuperating from a cesarean section and turned into a 1-month-old baby when soldiers from the Rapid Support Forces barged into her home in Sudan's eastern El Gezira state late last month. They accused her of loyalty to the army and its allies, the rivals in an 18-month war. They said, "You killed us, so today we'll kill you and rape you girls," she told newsmen, sheltering under a makeshift sheet in the town of New Halfa, where she arrived after walking for days on foot with her elderly mother and children. She said the soldiers chased them out of their village with whips and later shot at them on motorcycles, which two other victims of the attack also mentioned. Newsmen spoke to 13 victims of a series of intense violent raids in eastern Gezira over the past 2 weeks, which affected at least 65 villages and towns, according to activists. The UN says some 135,000 people have been displaced, largely to Kassala, Gedaref, and River Nile states, which are already packed with many of the more than 11 million internally displaced by the devastating war that broke out in April 2023. The war has unleashed hunger across the country, erased most signs of a functioning state in RSF-held areas, and prompted fears for fragmentation. Both sides are accused of hindering much-needed international assistance. At least 25 people died off Comoros Islands after traffickers capsized their boat on Friday night. The United Nations Migration Agency, IOM, said on Monday the third such incident in 3 months. IOM Comoros is starting to hear about the deaths of at least 25 people after their boat was deliberately capsized by traffickers off Comoros Islands between Anjouan and Mayotte on Friday night, IOM said in the statement. IOM, citing survivors, said the boat was carrying around 30 people from different nationalities, among them 7 women and 4 children. 5 survivors were rescued by fishermen on Saturday morning, IOM said. In September, a boat carrying 12 people sailing from Anjouan failed to reach Mayotte, while in August, 8 people died in a similar incident. IOM said, adding that thousands have died on this route since 2011 while attempting to reach Mayotte. Mayotte is officially part of France, although Comoros claims it. Popular podcaster Joe Rogan, who recently interviewed Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump for nearly 3 hours, said on Monday that he was endorsed the former president in the race to the White House. Trump faces Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris in the November 5th U.S. election in what polls show to be a tight race. Harris has got multiple celebrity endorsements. For the record, yes, that's an endorsement of Trump, Rogan said on X while posting a clip of his interview with billionaire Elon Musk, who has also endorsed Trump. Rogan said in his post that Musk made the most compelling case for Trump. The former president criticized Rogan in August on Truth Social, his social media platform, after the podcaster praised the independent candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. Kennedy has since pulled out of the race and endorsed Trump. Trump later called Rogan a good guy. Trump and Harris have courted voters with appearances on podcasts, in addition to more traditional rallies and media interviews. A poll by YouGov last year found that 81% of its listeners are male and 56% are under 35 years old, a demographic that tends to support Trump over Harris. Security fence rings a Las Vegas building where Nevada County tabulates votes. An Arizona sheriff has his department on high alert to guard against potential violence with drones and snipers on standby. The National Guard has been or will be activated in 19 states so far to help maintain peace as it turns American votes on Tuesday for either Republican Donald Trump or Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris for president. Concerns about potential political violence have prompted officials to take a variety of measures to bolster security during and after Election Day. Many of the most visible moves can be seen in the battleground states that will decide the presidential election. States like Nevada, where protests by Trump supporters broke out after the 2021 election. This year, a security fence brings the scene of some of those protests, the Las Vegas Tabulation Center. A defense official said on Monday that Alabama, Arizona, Delaware, Iowa, Illinois, North Carolina, New Mexico, Oregon, Wisconsin, and Washington state have current National Guard missions, while Washington, D.C., Colorado, Florida, Hawaii, Nevada, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Texas, and West Virginia have troops in standby in Arizona. In Arizona, a similar metal fence has been erected at Maricopa County Vote Tabulation Center in downtown Phoenix, a flashpoint in 2020 for rigged election conspiracy theories and threats against election officials. County Sheriff Ross Skinner said his department will be on high alert for threats and violence, and he has instructed staff to be available for duty. U.S. authorities have arrested a Turkish man who they allege was trying to violate sanctions by transporting oil from Venezuela, the Justice Department said on Monday. The U.S. reimposed sanctions on the Venezuelan oil company PDVSA in June after what it said was the failure of President Nicolas Maduro to return to talks with the political opposition and commit to fair elections. In a statement, the Justice Department said 37-year-old Taskin Tolak had allegedly conspired to illegally sell Venezuelan oil using deceit and trickery to hide the fact that this oil originated from Venezuela. Tolak was arrested in Miami on Saturday as he tried to leave for Turkey. The department said Tolak and others renamed and reflagged oil tankers and turned off the electronics that track vessel locations, receiving tens of millions of dollars from PDVSA. In June, newsmen reported that PDVSA had begun using tankers that navigate off radar to supply Cuba with oil. Large portion of tanker fleets owned by Venezuela and Cuba are under U.S. sanctions, which also limits their travel. U.S. Army soldier who was in critical condition after suffering non-combat injuries while supporting the military's pier off the coast of Gaza has died. The U.S. military said on Monday. Sergeant Quandarius Davon Stanley, who recently retired from the military, suffered critical injuries in May while supporting operations at sea of the U.S.-built pier designed to increase flows of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. In a statement, the U.S. Army confirms that Stanley had died, though it does not specify when. He was receiving treatment in a long-term care medical center. Stanley was an instrumental and well-respected first-line leader in the 7th Transportation Brigade Expeditionary TBX, especially during the mission to provide humanitarian assistance to the people of Gaza. Colonel John Eddie Gray, commander of the unit, says. 3 U.S. troops sustained non-combat injuries during the pair operation, but the other 2 suffered minor injuries and have returned to duty. Pennsylvania judge on Monday rejected Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner's attempt to block tech multi-billionaire Elon Musk's $1 million daily giveaways to voters in swing states on the eve of the presidential election. Lawyers for Musk's pro-Trump super PAC had argued that the Political Action Committee picks winners of the lucrative payouts based on who would be good spokespeople for its agenda and not registered voters at random, as Musk had initially described the prizes. Chris Garber, a lawyer from the PAC, made that argument in an effort to persuade Judge Angelo Foglietta that the giveaway was not an illegal lottery, as Krasner alleged in a lawsuit seeking to block the payments. Musk, a staunch supporter of former President Donald Trump, has said the final winner will be announced on Election Day. In response, Krasner took the stand to say the $1 million giveaways in the 7 swing states expected to decide the election were indeed an illegal lottery. He told Judge Foglietta some Pennsylvania residents had been scammed for their information and called the giveaway a grift aimed at political marketing. Foglietta denied Krasner's bid in a brief written order and said he would lay out his reasoning later. Election eve has arrived with the race for the White House still very tight, with the latest news Ipsos poll out on Sunday showing Kamala Harris slightly ahead of nationally, but Donald Trump ahead in some key swing states, and the 2 candidates deadlocked in Pennsylvania. Harris is spending her last full day campaigning in battleground Pennsylvania, while Trump is hitting the trail in North Carolina and Pennsylvania before ending the day in Michigan. Lula cancels APEC trip to Lima. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has cancelled a trip to the November 14th to 15th APEC Leaders Summit in Lima, a presidential advisor told newsmen on Thursday. The meeting of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum in order to focus on the G20 summit that will take place in Rio de Janeiro days later. Lula will also be visited by Chinese President Xi Jinping in Brasilia in what is being treated by the Brazilian government as its key diplomatic visits this year. Lula has cancelled a number of trips since he suffered a head injury earlier this month, including two United Nations summit and a BRICS meeting. Fresh medical exams showed on Thursday that Lula remains in stable condition after the injury. He shows no symptom and is able to walk normally, but is still under monitoring a meeting between Lula and U.S. President Joe Biden. Georgia Supreme Court has stayed the current deadline to accept absentee ballots following delays attributed to an equipment failure and a surge in last-minute applications. Republican National Committee and the Georgia Republican Party filed a lawsuit seeking to reverse that decision through the state's highest court. While the court has not ruled directly on whether the ballots would be accepted, it did say any late ballot cannot be counted and must be set aside until a further ruling. All justices agreed to see whether it ultimately allowed these voters additional time to return their ballots, or whether we must only count those received by the close of polls on Tuesday. The Cobb County Elections Department announced that approximately 3,200 absentee ballot applications were processed late due to a spike in requests before last Friday's deadline and technical problems. The department sent these ballots via next-day mail or delivery, including prepaid express return envelopes. Cobb County Superior Court Senior Judge Robert Floney approved an order on Thursday supported by 4 members of the Board of Elections and Registration and proposed by attorneys representing 3 voters affected by the issue. Under Judge Floney's order, absentee ballots mailed after October 30th will be counted if they are received by 5 p.m. on Friday, November 8th, and postmarked by 7 p.m. on Election Day, November 5th. The ruling is intended to protect the voting rights of those impacted by the delays. Republican-led state of Missouri asked a judge on Monday to block the U.S. Justice Department from sending lawyers to St. Louis on Election Day to monitor for compliance with federal voting rights laws, even after the city's election board agreed to permit it. The Republican-led state of Missouri asked a judge on Monday to block the U.S. Justice Department from sending lawyers to St. Louis on Election Day to monitor for compliance with federal voting rights, even after the city's election board agreed to permit it. The lawsuit, which was filed in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Missouri by the state's Attorney General and Secretary of State, accuses the Justice Department of making an 11th-hour plan that intends to displace state election authorities by sending poll monitors on Tuesday to locations throughout St. Louis. You're watching the international news on Atlantic. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching the broadcast of the international news on Atlantic Television Network. And now to the rest of us. We are open for adverts placements, news and events coverage, personality, society and political interviews, products, service promotion and commercials. You can connect with us on all our ATN socials, Facebook and YouTube at Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok at Atlantic TV Network 1, Twitter at Atlantic TV Net. Watch us live on our website, www.atlanticnetwork.tv. Japan's defense minister said soon after Pyongyang condemned military drills by its rivals and just hours before the U.S. election. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister condemned drills involving the United States, Japan, and South Korea in a report published on state media. At least 7 missiles flew to an altitude of 100 kilometers and covered a range of 400 kilometers before falling outside Japan's exclusive economic zone into the ocean. Japan's defense minister, General Nakatani, said they were fired at around 7:30 a.m. on Tuesday from the vicinity of Sarimwa, North Hangwai Province. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the United States was consulting closely with South Korea, Japan, and other regional allies after the launches and continued to monitor the situation. New solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile, dubbed Hwasong-19, and comes hours before voting open Korea, said Yang Juan Dalmau, who is running for Puerto Rico's Independence Party and Citizen Victory Movement, wins. It will be the first win for a candidate not representing either of the two main parties that have dominated the island's politics for decades. Trailing Gonzalez and Dalmau in poll is Jesus Manuel Ortiz of the Popular Democratic Party, which supports the island's territorial status. Also running is Javier Jimenez of Project Dignity, a conservative party created in 2019. For decades, the New Progressive Party and the Popular Democratic Party would receive at least 90% of all votes. But that began to change in 2016, with newer parties attracting more voters amid economic and political turmoil. Results are not expected late on Tuesday, with analysts warning it might be a couple of days before that happens. During the 2020 elections, it took officials 4 days to release preliminary results. Puerto Rico's State Elections Commission is still counting more than 220,000 early and absentee votes it's received, with officials from various political parties noting the process is slow going. The counting of those votes began more than 2 weeks later than usual. New Zealand police are investigating an arson attack at an Auckland mosque early on Tuesday when a fire smoldered for 8 hours before it was noticed and emergency services were called. Mosque attacks resonate in New Zealand after 51 people were killed in its worst mass shooting in 2019 that targeted Muslims attending Friday prayers in Christchurch. An assault live-streamed on Facebook by gunman Brenton Tarrant. Closed-circuit television showed someone broke into the Imam Reza Mosque in New Lane just before 1 a.m. and deliberately lit a fire, the police said on Tuesday. Police are still investigating possible motive and cannot say it is hate-related crime, they said in a statement. Tuesday's attack was shocking and horrific, mosque authorities said on social media. There are those who try to harm us, to take the very foundations of our sacred space, they said in a post. Philippines ordered evacuation stockpiled food and put soldiers on standby in preparation for Typhoon Jingxing, officials said on Tuesday, as the storm barrels towards northeastern towns where it could make a landfall this week. The storm center of the typhoon, parking winds of 120 kilometers per hour, was estimated to be 590 kilometers from the eastern town of Bala in the province of Aurora. State Weather Agency PAC-ASA said local government ministry had called for those in remote communities to evacuate in advance as rescuers to reach them during the onslaught of the storm. Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro said various government agencies have combined efforts to issue early warnings, plan ahead, and pre-position the goods and services needed. Teodoro told a briefing, Food is being stockpiled, soldiers are on standby to help in rescue efforts, and dams are releasing water ahead of time to prevent flooding, officials added. The storm could hit land between Thursday evening and Friday morning around the northern province of Cagayan, bringing torrential rain to towns in its path, said weather agency official Nathaniel Servando. Though it could still swerve away, about 24 million people could be directly affected by the typhoon, said Civil Defense Administrator Ariel Napomuceno. The storm is the third in less than a month to menace the Philippines after Storm Trami and Super Typhoon Kongray pound the main island of Luzon in recent weeks, killing 151 with 21 missing, civil defense figures show. Around 20 tropical storms strike the Philippines each year on average, bringing heavy rains, strong winds, and deadly landslides. In an unusual warning, China's Navy told young officers and personnel that they could get ensnared by online dating scams and virtual gambling if they let down their guard, exposing themselves to security risks and undermining the military. Addressing those born from 1990 who were becoming the core of the Army, the People's Liberation Army PLA Navy said in a social media post that young soldiers should avoid revealing their military identity online as they could be extremely easy targets of criminals. The political and confidential nature of the military profession dictates that the military personnel identified must not be exposed online, it said. Distinguished carefully and keep some distance when making friends online. Align in the post advice and never lose sight of your principles and make random friends with netizens. The Navy also cautioned against virtual gambling, which is illegal in China, likening gambling addiction to being possessed by a demon and warning against schemes that could lead to a fall into an endless abyss of debts. China's military projects an image of power, from launching drills around democratically governed Taiwan to deploying patrols in South China Sea. But President Xi Jinping, also the military's commander, and 10,000 North Korean troops have arrived in Russia to support its war against Ukraine, with a significant number in the frontline areas, including Kursk, South Korea's defense ministry said on Tuesday. The remarks came hours after the Pentagon said that there were at least 10,000 North Korean soldiers in Kursk, near the Ukraine border, but could not corroborate reports that they were engaged in combat. Ukraine's intelligence agency has also said that about 12,000 North Korean troops, including 500 officers and 3 generals, were already in Russia, with training taking place at 5 military bases. We understood that more than 10,000 North Korean troops are currently in Russia, and a significant number of them have moved to the frontline areas, including Kursk. John Ha-kyu, a spokesperson for Seoul's defense ministry, told the briefing, citing intelligence authorities. But John said he had no information when asked whether the North Koreans were engaged in combat, and about the South Korean media reports citing an unnamed government official that as many as 40 North Korean troops had been killed on the battlefield. Russia launched a Soyuz rocket early on Tuesday carrying 2 satellites designed to monitor the space weather around Earth and 53 small satellites, including 2 Iranian ones. Russia's Roscosmos space agency said the Soyuz 2-1 launched spacecraft, which lifted off from Russia's Vostochny Cosmodrome, carried 2 Lunosphere M satellites, which will become part of the space system for monitoring the Earth's ionosphere. The agency said the ionosphere, where Earth's atmosphere meets space, stretches roughly 50 to 400 miles above Earth's surface, according to information provided on NASA's website. Each ionosphere's M satellite weighs 430 kilograms, and its working orbit is at an altitude of 820 kilometers, according to Interfax news agency. The system will include a total 4 of the Ionosphere M satellites. The next 2 devices are planned to be launched in 2025, Roscosmos reported. Among the 53 small satellites are 2 Iranian satellites, the Kosar, a high-resolution imaging satellite, and Hudhud, a small communication satellite, as well as the first Russian-Chinese student satellite, Druzhba Atok. Russia in February launched into space an Iranian research satellite that will scan Iran's topography from orbit, Iran state media reported at the time. At least 29 Palestinians were killed earlier on Tuesday in Israeli airstrikes on tents housing displaced people in several areas of Gaza, including Beit Lahia, Deir al-Bala, and the town of al-Zawaidi, the official Palestinian news agency reported. According to Wafa, 20 people were killed in a heavy airstrike on a home in Beit Lahia, located in the northern part of Gaza. 2 people were killed when a tent in central Deir al-Bala was hit and 4 people were killed and others injured in a similar attack on a tent in al-Zawaidi in Bakassi, a city on Jakarta's eastern edge. The reports said roads had been closed around the factory. Haryanto, a firefighter who was at the factory complex, told newsmen that 1 person had been found dead at the site. The factory is operated by PT Primus Sanus. The 13th-month war between Israel and Hezbollah has killed more than 3,000 people in Lebanon, the country's health ministry said on Monday, more than double the number of people killed since the last major war 2 decades ago. The war shows no signs of ending, and Israel has said it is carrying out new operations targeting Hezbollah infrastructure across Lebanon and in parts of Syria, while Hezbollah continues to launch dozens of rockets into northern Israel. Hezbollah began firing rockets into northern Israel